Okay, good afternoon everyone. Let's get started with today's class. So in last class we were looking at equalizers, right? And let me just share my screen. So we said there are three different types of equalization. In fact, we said, uh, okay, I'm just going to use the slides um, some of the slides that I'm referring to. They'll also post them up uh, on the Moodle page so that you can use it for your reference. Okay. So if you look at a typical link, it looks something like this. Right? So you basically have n down to 0 parallel data, you serialize it, then you come to the TX where you have FIR equalization plus you also have the drivers, of course, then going into your channel. Your receiver, it has multiple ways of doing equalization. Okay. Now equalization, if you recall, is because the channel is a low pass channel, something like this. And what we are doing is trying to somehow enhance the high frequency content, because if you can make the bandwidth of the channel wider, what happens is that the ISI reduces. Now as the ISI reduces, obviously your eye opens better and your better rate increases. Okay. Now there were three types of receiver side equalization that we saw in last class, or rather we just had an introduction, right? One is an RxFIR where I said that, I think this has the slide. So TXFIR we saw, it's a transmit side feed forward equalization. You take the data and then you have the previous data, the delayed data, and so on, and the input pulse shaped is kind of distorted. This is called as pre-distortion, right? And then you have a composite signal response like this. On the Rx side you can have an Rx FIR, but the problem is that you have to implement the time delay and all these multiplication coefficients in the analog domain, now which becomes very difficult to implement with all the process variation that is and mismatch that is existed, becomes very tough, and therefore usually RxFIR is not very used. Okay. Now the problem with these linear equalizers, right? What happens is, like, let's say this is your channel and this is your noise. Okay, the channel is down, the noise is here. When you put an equalizer which does not discriminate between your signal and noise, what happens is your signal, your linear equalizer's response is like this. The equalized channel is like this, but the noise is also increasing. Right? So your SNR at these places becomes bad. All right. So one of the, although there have been papers with this RxFIR, usually people do not use. It's a very complex thing to do, and that is not used. So digital FIR is also possible, where you basically go and directly sample it. Okay. So at the input of the receiver, right, what you do is you put a sample and hold, you put an ADC, and then after you do the ADC, like in the digital domain, you can do, I mean, basically once you take it to the digital domain, you can do whatever you want. Okay. But the problem here, as you can expect, is that you need an extremely high bandwidth sample and hold and high bandwidth ADC, which is kind of almost impossible, right? There is an example given here. So this is a 6.25 giga samples per second ADC, and it's a 4.5 bit flash ADC, right? And the power consumption is very very high. Okay. So you have track and hold, and then you have actually you need 12.5 giga samples per second, but then you do it by switching between. You have a time interleaved ADC, and then you do that. Okay. But usually this is not done. Right? So which is why we come to what is called a CTLE. I started off with the CTLE in last class, continuous time linear equalizer. Okay, there is a passive implementation and there is an active implementation. What I drew in the class was the active CTLE, which we drew in the class. And so if I just move back to my slides from last class, right, this is a differential CTLE where uh, it's a differential amplifier, but at the source, of the two transistors, you connect a parallel combination of RS and CS. Right? And if you draw the small signal single-ended equivalent, or rather the single-ended differential half circuit, the half circuit looks something like this. So it becomes RS by 2 and 2 times CS. Now you can draw the small signal equivalent circuit for this one, and you can do this. The passive one is also like this. In essence, it is like this. The passive one, if you derive the transfer function, okay, from let's say the input to the output, what will it be? It is going to be this impedance divided by Z1 plus Z2, right? So the impedance, if you substitute, let's say if this is Z1 and this is Z2, if you substitute and you compute the transfer function, it turns out to be something like this. Now, the interesting feature of this transfer function is that, okay, it has a certain DC gain, right? Or if you set S equal to 0, this term vanishes, this term vanishes, and you basically have only R2 by R1 plus R2. So you have a DC gain which is less than 1. So it is a fraction, right, in a passive implementation. Now, if you look at the high frequency behavior, you can see that there is a 0. Where is the 0? It is located at minus 1 by R1 C1. Okay. So this R1 C1 contributes to your 0. And then you also have a pole. Where is the pole located? The parallel combination of the R and the sum of the two capacitors. So if you see what is the, so this basically, how does it look like? You have a DC gain and then you get the 0, right? So if I were to kind of draw, let me, right? So you basically have some DC gain, and then you have the 0, and then you go and have the pole, right? So the gain that you have is basically, let's say this is your high frequency gain, this is your DC gain. Okay, so the peaking is basically taken as the ratio of the high frequency gain and the DC gain. Okay, and it turns out to be something like this. All right, and the active CTLE, as I mentioned, you can take something like this. You can see that there is RD and CP here, RS and CS here. I want you to take it up, derive the transfer function. Okay, the final answer should look something similar to this. Okay, so please take it as an exercise, and you need to be able to derive this particular transfer function. Okay, now if you look at the transfer function here again, because there are two capacitors, you have two poles here, right? And you also have 1 0. So if you draw the board diagram, you have a certain A naught, and A naught is the DC gain. Because it is an active circuit, obviously your DC gain will be higher, and the DC gain is quite easy to estimate because it is as if you have a common source with a source degeneration resistor. Okay, so the DC gain is Gm times Rd divided by 1 plus Gm Rs by 2. Rs by 2 is the resistance at the source. So it is nothing but a common source with the source degeneration, which we saw in the last course, right? So this is your DC gain, and you have the first 0. 0 it is at minus 1 by RSCS. So the curve goes up. It's a high pass, and then what happens? You get the first pole, right? And then you have even the second pole, and therefore the response is going to look something like this. All right. So the peaking gain, you basically take the gain at this particular point, and you get a peaking gain of 1 plus GMRS by 2. All right. Now this is a very simple circuit, but at the same time it's a very powerful circuit. Okay. Now this is also a linear equalizer. We will, see what is a non-linear equalizer, and maybe then you will appreciate. This is basically a normal linear equalizer, and what it does is it provides peaking, and the advantage of this CTLE is that you don't need to put any inductor here. See, otherwise, if you want to have a kind of a bandpass response, right, you usually have to go and use an inductor. But just by using a transistor, and you can set the value of the zeros and the poles by tweaking RSCS, RD and GM, right? And of course RDCD will determine the second pole. So by tweaking these values, you can automatically set the zero and the poles that you want. All right. Now this is a very popular circuit, and in so many different applications this is used. Usually this forms your front end receiving. This is the first kind of the first stage that is there at your receiver, the CTLE. Okay. All right. Now this is an example. You can see how they have done just by changing, and sometimes you can even make this capacitor and resistor adaptive so that you can change the zero. So what? So where is the zero located? Zero is 1 by RSCS. So in other words, if you can tweak this RSCS, you can move the position of zeros. Okay, which means that you can kind of determine where you want your, I mean, the kind of upward slope to begin, right? And the longer you put, I mean, the more the distance between the pole and the zero, the more the peaking you would get, right? So that can be done with this. All right. Now, what happens when you change these things? So, for example, if you see, as you change your CS, right, what happens? This kind of moves in this direction. As you increase your CS, right, this the place at which it starts peaking, right? So here, I mean, it starts moving in this direction. Increasing CS moves the zero and the first pole to a lower frequency. Both of them get moved out to a lower frequency. Whereas increasing RS moves the zero to lower frequency and increases peaking, which you can see here, right? So by changing RS, what you're changing is the zero moves lower and the peaking gain increases. Right? So this is how you design. So now let us move to the third way of equalization. So usually, as you can see here, the first stage will be a CTLE. Okay, no, usually people don't use RXFIR, right? And the other thing is called as DFE. Okay, what is DFE? DFE basically stands for decision feedback equalization. Okay, so in decision feedback equalization, it's a nonlinear equalizer. So let me explain how this particular thing works. All right. Right. Now, in this decision feedback equalization is a very popular thing that is used, and it's very widely used, in fact, and it's a very powerful tool. And the way it works is like this. Okay. See, here you have some kind of kind of signal coming in, right? Now forget the feedback loop. All right. Now what happens is, this is a decision slicer, or slicer as it is called, which is nothing but a comparator. Okay. The comparator decides whether it is a 1 or a 0. All right. Now what is here is basically a digital bit. All right. It's either VDD or ground. Okay. It has made a decision. It tells you whether it's a logic high or a logic low. All right. Now this is fed into a feedback loop. Okay. Now this is nothing but an FIR filter. What is an FIR filter? Delay, multiply, and add. Okay. So it goes through a Z inverse. You multiply with weight W1, then you add it, and goes to the next delay, weight 2, add. Okay. So this is what happens. Now what is the concept behind this one? The concept is that we know that in ISI. Okay, let me maybe go to, yeah. All right. So we know, let's say this is a pulse response, right? Now we know that the current symbol is affected because of this bit, this bit, this bit, this bit, this bit, this bit, and so on. Right? Now, from the perspective of a receiver, the receiver has already received all these bits which I have circled. Okay. what I have circled is of course the transfer function for those bits, right? So in other words, the current bit that you are receiving, okay, let's say y of n is nothing but, let's say y of some h naught multiplied by x of n, plus you have h1 of x n minus 1 plus h2 times x n minus 2 plus h3 times x n minus 3 and so on, right? Basically it is a sum of this h naught into the current sample, whether it was a 1 or a minus 1, right? Of course the modeling here is done as 1 and minus 1 because we are talking about differential channels, right? And so we are talking about differential voltages, right? So h1 into x of n, x here is nothing but your digital bit, whether it's a 1 or a 0, right? Sorry, 1 or minus 1. Same way h2 into 1 or minus 1, h3 into 1 or minus 1, okay? Now from the perspective of your receiver, you already know what is x of n minus 1, already know what is x of n minus 2, you already know what is x of n minus 3, right? Because you have already taken the decision, and it is propagating to this through this chain of delays. You already know, okay? And if you know these coefficients because you have already characterized your channel, all that remains to be done is, see, you go and tell, okay, I know this xn minus 1, xn minus 2, xn minus 3 and so on. I know h1, h2, h3 and so on. All I need to do is find that product and subtract from what is coming in. If I do that, what am I going to take care of? I'm basically going to set my ISI, post cursor ISI, to 0. Is it clear? Right? So that is exactly what is done. So as this decay gets pushed into this delay chain, so basically what you're doing is, this is W1 into Z, the first xn minus 1, W2 into xn minus 2 and so on. All this added up together is the actual ISI that has been added to your incoming signal, okay, or it's the estimate of the ISI that has been added to your signal. And the best thing to do is to subtract it from the incoming signal, and once you do that, that is what is happening here, okay, and that is going to your slicer, okay. So this is what is called as a decision feedback equalizer. So is it clear? Any doubts, any questions? Is it clear? Yes,
Yes, sir.
okay. So let us go back to this side and let's see. So DFE is a non-linear equalizer. So that we can agree, right? Because you have a comparator in the loop, and the comparator makes the whole thing non-linear, right? So compare this with your, kind of contrast this with your CTLE, where it is a fully, linear system, right? It's a linear analog circuit, and then it's a linear equalizer. Okay, this is a non-linear equalizer, and the slicer makes a symbol decision. That is, it quantizes the input. ISI is then directly subtracted from the input signal, incoming signal, via a feedback FIR filter. Okay, so you estimate. So of course, uh, the correct word to use is to say that this is an estimate of the ISI, and then you subtract that estimate. Okay, so what are its advantages? Of course, the biggest advantage is that it can boost the high frequency content without amplifying noise and crosstalk, right? So it is not like a generic high pass filter which amplifies the high frequency noise and high frequency crosstalk components also, right? What this is doing is that it is taking only what is needed, it amplifies, the rest it leaves, right? I mean, the equivalent frequency domain response would look, basically it gets rid of ISI while not amplifying noise and crosstalk. That's what it does. And the other thing is, the filter tap coefficients can be adaptively tuned without any back channel. Okay, so the other uh, logical thing that people did is, okay, now I have a certain tap coefficients, right? What are the tap coefficients? Basically this W1, W2, W3 all the way up to Wn. Now these can be set by some kind of a recursive algorithm. Okay, so there are very well established DSP algorithms where you take you can use an LMS or gradient search and all these kinds of things. Uh, Different ways of implementing adaptive equalization is there, and back channel meaning you don't need a separate channel to kind of loop back the data and things like that. Okay, what are the disadvantages? Obviously it cannot cancel precursor ISI, correct? So it can take care of post cursor ISI because it is working on data that has already been received by the receiver. Okay, but it doesn't have any idea about the data which is going to come in future. Okay, so precursor ISI cannot be handled by DFE. It can only be it can only handle post cursor ISI. That is why you see the DFE region of influence starts from here onwards. Okay, all right. The third is okay, chance for error propagation. Anyway, it's low in practical links. Critical feedback timing path. Okay, so we will see what that feedback is. So if you look at this is a timed system. This is a discrete time system, right? So this clock, there is a clock which is running, right? Now, if you, I don't know if they have, okay, yeah. So there is this clock which is running. Okay, let's say at this clock edge, the comparator makes a decision. Okay, it goes through this one, right? Maybe I'll take a different color. Yeah. Now this path is your critical path, right? That is, by the time the next clock edge arrives, what all should you have done? You should have taken this data, multiplied it. Okay, this Z inverse is probably to kind of indicate. In practice, you may not do that. You will not have a separate Z inverse. Okay, so you have to multiply with W1, add with the rest of the things, subtract from the incoming signal, and be ready at the input of your comparator with the setup time requirement being met. You understood, right? So this multiplication operation, this addition operation, and again the subtraction operation and setup time. All this has to be completed within 1 unit interval. Okay, so that becomes your critical path, and it is quite tough. I mean, you have to. I mean, how the timing is going to be. Okay. And this DFE tap coefficients, right? Another point. Let me add. Yeah, this is where they explain this. So let's look at that. So if only DFE equalization is there, DFE tap coefficients is equal to the unequalized channels pulse response values. That's how I explained it, right? You have A1, A2. You basically take, I mean, the H1, H2, and so on. Take it and subtract it. That is if only DFE is used. But excuse me, in a typical link, what happens? There is a TX FFE, feed forward equalization, in the transmit side. There is the CTLE's response. All these things are in the picture. So all these things are in the picture, and therefore the pulse response of the channel itself has changed, or the combined pulse response has changed. So what is needed is that you need to estimate the pulse response of the TXFFE. The drivers, I mean, a driver itself is kind of an RC network, so it has a certain roll off, right? So the TXFFE, the RC, the driver's response, the channel's response, and then you have the CTLE. All put together, you will have a certain pulse response or an impulse response from which you can calculate the pulse response, right? Now that pulse response is what has to be modeled by this feedback FIR filter. Okay, so if you don't use anything, you take only the channel response, right? But now you have the FFE, you have the TX driver, you have the channel, and you have the CTLE. So all put together will come up with a certain pulse response which is better than your original channel pulse response, because both FFE and your CTLE is going to produce some kind of a high frequency peaking, which kind of reduces the ISI and so on, but nevertheless you are left with a certain amount of ISI. Now that residual ISI is what you need to compensate with your DFE. Okay, so which is why what they have mentioned here, with other equalization, DFE tap coefficient should equal the pre-DFE pulse response value. That's what I explained now. Okay, the pre-DFE pulse response values. Okay, now this is a very flexible thing, and you can do that. So of course, people have shown here with just a 2-tap DFE how you can just open up the eye in this example. Okay, all right. Now this is taken from this paper quoted here, right? And it's a 6.25 gigabits per second link. It's a 4-tap DFE. Now, how have they implemented it here? Okay. Now they come in here, RX in A1, right? Now A1 very well could have been the CTLE, right? And then what happens? It goes here, right? And then you basically what happens? This is your decision feedback equalizer. Okay, this is your comparator. This is also a comparator. So what they are doing is they are using a half rate architecture. Okay, and what they are doing is so just look at this particular thing once. So you have the latch, sorry, comparator, and then it is immediately going into your I mean, you have your tap, you have your mux, and then you go to the next latch, again this mux, next latch again. So delay, multiply, and add. Okay, so that's what they have done here, and then it goes and adds to the RX equal. So this is one way of implementing. All right. Now this is the critical path. You can see that there is a propagation delay here. You have the clock to Q delay here, and then the propagation delay of the mux, and then this whole thing. This whole thing plus setup time should be less than 1 unit interval. Okay. So this is your critical path, and again the critical path is explained here, right? So you can, right? So how do you do this summer? So this is an implementation of that summer or subtractor. The way it is done is it is kind of looking a little bit like your current steering DAC. All right. So you have your input coming in here, and then maybe you can even put your R and C here, right? This is your main input. All right. And then H1 bar is the first tap, and like that you go up to Hn bar, and the weighting coefficients are done by this current sources. And then of course this is an offset cancellation thing to cancel out the offset. Okay, so the weighting is done by current scaling, right? Addition is done in the current domain, right? It is kind of looking like your Gilbert cell mixer, or the current steering DAC that you have studied. So both scaling is done by scaling currents. Addition is done by doing current addition. The bit and bit bar will only, you know, uh, it's like it basically steers the current either to the positive side or the negative side. All right. And this is your DFE integrating summer. So basically, this is how it happens. All right. Okay. All right. And so these are some papers that they have talked about. All right. And I want to show you. So this is the main cursor. So what happens is all this using DFE, you can basically set the whole thing to 0. All right. So I'm just skipping through all this part. All right. There are different implementations. You can use an IIR feedback or an FIR feedback. All these things are possible. These are, but the, these are all different papers, different ways of implementing. All right. Different implementation things are there. So equalization adaptation techniques. So there are different adaptation techniques which I'm not going to go in today. Okay, we will probably just leave it. So basically, as you can see here, it's just some kind of a DSP algorithm. So number of updates and how it works and so on. So I skipped this part. So we'll just know that there is some kind of adaptation going on, so that we will, I mean, it's too much to cover throughout this whole course. What I want to do, cover towards the end of this class, is basically this advanced modulation schemes and other techniques. Okay. So far what we have seen is that the data is encoded as a two-level signal, right? So if it's a single-ended signal, it is 0 and 1. If it's differential signal, it is going to be, we say plus or minus 1, but basically what we know, it is a differential signal, right? So yeah, in the implementation we saw that, the TX implementation, it will be either plus or minus IR or plus or minus IR by 2, something like this. So that is what is going to be your signal, right? It's a two-level signaling scheme, so it is called as PAM2. Okay, so or 2 PAM, that is pulse amplitude modulation. It is a 2 PAM signal. All right, but can we do even better? The answer is yes, and there are other techniques. A very popular technique is to use a 4 PAM. Okay, now what is 4 PAM? 4 PAM means there are 4 levels. Okay, so the data is encoded as, okay, let's say 0 0 0 1 1 0 and 1 1. All right, so let us say if this is going to be differential 0, so let's say this is plus delta v minus delta v plus 2 delta v minus 2 delta v. Okay, so this is the way that you encode the data. So it becomes not a 2-level signal, it becomes a 4-level signal. Okay, so in fact this is also something which is very commonly used. In fact, you will see that certain links are 28 gigabits per second PAM2 and 56 gigabits per second PAM4. Okay, so now again, of course, this complicates your transmitter and receiver fairly quite a bit, right? So in when you talk about a PAM4, you have to talk about 4 discrete levels at which you can send your data, right? And also your eye margins, everything comes down pretty badly, right? The eye has to look very cool, but that is not given here. Okay, so you will have basically 3 eyes. All right, that's how it will basically look. Okay. So if you look at, there is also another thing called as duo-binary signaling. Okay, now what happens is that by using PAM4 or 4 PAM, you will be able to send in twice the amount of data in the same bandwidth. Uh, of course, duo binary some people use, but that's not something we'll go into. Okay. So with this, I'll wind up our discussion on equalization. So if you look at equalization, there is transmit side equalization, receive side equalization. There is transmit side equalization. It's a feed forward equalizer, or what is called as it's an FIR filter, right? And then receive side equalization. Usually you have a combination of CTLE as well as DFE. Okay, so CTLE is a linear equalizer, DFE is a nonlinear equalizer. The DFE can be implemented, as a FIR filter, or it can also be implemented as some kind of a IIR filter. So that is all fine. Okay, the final job is to cancel out all your uh, all your post cursor ISO. Okay, and typically this DFE does an excellent job of cancelling out your post cursor ISI very well, but it cannot handle your precursor ISI. So precursor ISI has to be handled by your CTLE as well as your TXFFE. Okay. So any doubts, any questions? Okay. So for
No,
your
sir.
final exam, which if everything goes well, I think starts next Monday. I have already shared a delta sigma paper. I will be sharing one high speed IO paper also by today. Okay, and I both these papers are included for your uh, exam. As I mentioned, the exam is going to be a fully open book exam, so which means that you can take the help of both the papers, right? Like last time, go through both the papers. If you have any doubt, you can ask me. and if you can let me know. Questions will be asked based on the two papers, as well as from the material that has been covered in class. Okay, and the material that has been covered in class after your quiz two. Okay, so in order to make life a little easier for you, so that would basically mean your delta sigma and this Hazardy circuits. So these are the two major topics or modules that have been covered after your quiz 2. So for your final exam, it's a fully open book exam. You have those two papers and the material covered after the uh, quiz 2, which is delta sigma as well as this one. So questions will be conceptual, based on what you have learned. It's an open book exam, and you can refer to any of the notes that we have used. Okay, so tomorrow's first hour will be there, and hopefully that will be the last lecture. And in tomorrow's lecture we will be looking at CDR. Okay, so if I just scroll up to the right. Okay, so in this one, this is the serializer, which of course we know it's nothing but a mux. Clock generation, this is a standard PLL, right? And then you have your, TX FIR we have seen, channel, CTLE, DFV we have seen, deserializer, of course, it's a demux. Okay, what is of interest is basically your RX clock recovery. Okay, or it is called as clock and data recovery circuit, or sometimes you'll have what is called as clock forwarded architecture. Okay, so this clocking stuff we will see in tomorrow's class, and we will wind with that. So tomorrow will be the last class. Uh, PLL anyway we have covered quite a bit in the RFIC class. Okay. So any doubts, any questions?
No,
Okay.
sir.
Okay. Thanks guys. Thanks everyone. Have a nice day.